All right. And we are live for episode number 18 of the Before the Trainwreck series. I'm joined today by my friend, Stirling Cooper. How you doing, brother?
How you doing, Rich? And we're not brothers, despite the fact that we have the last name, Rich.
Despite we have a similar look and the same surname, we'll get to the creation of your name, with your Batman origin story. But for those of you that don't know, Stirling is an adult film star. I tried to check your jobs. I don't know what you call them, jobs or whatever, but it looks like you've got over 196 different scenes.
Sorry, I just got a bunch of feedback. Sorry, man.
Oh, you're getting feedback from the broadcast running on another one.
Yeah, I just closed that window there. My bad.
Perfect. That's where it's coming from. Yeah. So sorry. On the listing here, so when I search your name, it takes me to a iafd.com site, and it looks like you got like 196 plus scenes.
I actually have over 300. They don't really count. There's a bunch of smaller websites I've shot for that don't end up on that list. They tend to focus mainly on like the big American companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So needless to say, I mean, you've got a pretty decent notch count. You got a lot of experience. This is not new for you, yeah?
No, I mean, I had a pretty big notch count before I even got into the industry, to be honest.
Yeah, so let's talk about your move into the industry, because you weren't Stirling Cooper, your entire life. You were just a guy in Australia that was running his own business, yeah?
Yeah, so I ran a paleo meal delivery business back in Australia. That's kind of how I learned about like nutrition and getting in shape and hitting the gym. All that sort of coalesced. Yeah, and then I kind of got sick of it after a while. I had some falling out with my business partner, and then he left, and I sold the business, and I decided to get into porn because I'd kind of always wanted to do it as a teenager. That was like the teenage fantasy, was being in porn. And coming from like a really small country town in rural Australia, you don't really get exposed to much of that, like celebrity or stardom or like film stars and things like that. So it was quite glamorized.
And how old were you when you decided to sell your business?
29.
What was it? Oh, okay, so, dude, that was recently then, because you're what, 33?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 4 years ago. So you've been running this business doing paleo food delivery. And what about leaving that and getting into porn appealed to you, aside from unlimited sex with beautiful women?
That was the main reason, Rich. So,
is that right?
It was also like I kind of locked myself into like a prison of my own making with that business. The way I'd set it up, it was very hard for me to extract myself from the hands-on day-to-day nature of it. I mean, I've heard your story about your finance business and stuff. So I wasn't really able to separate myself too much from it.
Mm-hmm.
And the income had kind of capped, and so I've had, prior to that, I ran an underwear business, which wasn't as successful, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Did a Kickstarter before that, and then before that, I was a pharmaceutical chemist. I have a chemistry degree. So like I've bounced through various different fields and experiences, primarily because I'm the kind of guy that can get bored with things very quickly, so I'm always looking for that new adventure, that new excitement, something that I can learn from scratch, something I've got no idea about, and I can learn it from scratch, and it just presents a new challenge for me. So that's
a lot of times when guys kind of fall into something that they feel is their purpose, it's like taking a frying pan to the forehead and it's real obvious. Was there a frying pan to the forehead moment when you got into porn, when you said, okay, I don't want to be a chemist, I don't want to deliver paleo food, don't want anything to do with any of these other things?
I guess I wouldn't say it's like, it'd be pretty funny to say that being in the adult film industry was my purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like it's
last time we talked, though, you said that you can't see yourself doing anything else.
That's correct, because I love this job.
Yeah.
There's no like I said, I've done a lot of different kinds of work. There is no job quite like this. It is unbelievably fun, even more fun than you might imagine.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Before we go there, how did you arrive at Stirling Cooper? So, for those guys that are watching that are unfamiliar, most people aren't using their real names when it comes to adult film. Does anybody use a real name?
Some girls will use their middle and last names.
Okay. So, how did you arrive at Stirling Cooper?
Sterling came, well, first of all, after I picked my name, everyone assumed that I'd gotten it from Mad Men, because that's the name of the advertising agency. I had never even seen Mad Men until after I'd picked the name. But Sterling came from the Adult Swim cartoon Archer, the main character Sterling, this ridiculous spy character. Love that show, so I picked Sterling, and the Cooper came from Bradley Cooper because I like Bradley Cooper's character in the movie Limitless. So I just smashed them together. Actually, there was actually a few other names on like the potential name list, and I basically just DM'd all the girls in my phone and said, "Hey, which of these like 3 names sounds the sexiest?" And Sterling Cooper was the winner.
It's funny you say that because women tend to appreciate the last name Cooper. I mean, I've got nothing else to compare it to. Obviously, you had a different last name before. How does that normally get received?
This is much better received.
there you go.
My real name's a bit. My real name is not a sexy name.
Yeah, that's fine. You can keep it under the radar. For those of you that aren't familiar with the origin of Cooper, it's actually they would tag the name Cooper to anybody that was a barrel maker in medieval England. So everybody had a task, and anybody that was making barrels was known as Coopers, believe it or not. But yeah, let's keep going. So as far as why you love this more than anything that you've ever done, aside from the obvious, I mean, there's got to be some other things beyond just being able to sleep with beautiful women. Because I mean, anybody with looks, money, status, that has their shit sorted, that's a high value man, can really have access to as many women as he wants. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's got to be more to it than just the women part.
So the pay is actually really, really good for like the time you spend on set. Like my hourly rate is like higher than it's ever been in my life, and I earn more money doing this than I ever did. I mean, prior to this, my highest paying job was being like an industrial chemist for a pharmaceutical company. Like, and I earn more doing this with like a third of the.
What is the hourly rate for a male porn star?
Well, you're looking at about $100 an hour if you break down like how long you're actually on set for and what you're getting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's that. Obviously, like there's the obvious reasons why anyone would enjoy this job, but then there's like the camaraderie and I guess the freedom of the industry itself. You're not beholden to the kind of PC-less, the PC humorless environment of the corporate world. You can go to set and you can crack all kinds of jokes. All my co-stars, I'm kissing them on the cheek, I'm slapping them on the ass. Even like the PAs and the assistants, and sometimes when I have a female director, like there's all kinds of flirting going on, and you don't have to worry about getting a sexual harassment allegation for flirting with somebody on a porn set. They do have sexual harassment allegations, but that's for things that are a little bit more serious. But yeah, it's the freedom aspect of it. And obviously, I'm only working like 15 days out of the month. I have the rest of the time to focus on my health, my fitness, to keep my relationships with my friends strong. The work-life balance of this is like nothing I've ever done.
And what was the transition like from your paleo business into adult film? I think you said and if you guys haven't watched it, we did a broadcast, but two and a half weeks ago on Rollo's channel, more focusing on the sexual dynamics part of things. But I think you said something along the lines of you're doing escorting, and then you got involved in like fulfilling either women, like married couples fetishes, where you're basically cucking the guy. He'd sit in the corner while you just go to town on his wife, sort of thing. Like there was a transition into porn, or was that part of it, or like how did that all happen again?
Yes, that was part of it. So basically, just to rewind back, before I started the paleo business, I got involved in the swingers scene as a single guy, which is very hard to do. And from that, I started, I got invited to parties by girls, and then was having exhibitionist sex and group sex and stuff like that. Realized I was pretty good at it, and I didn't have a problem performing in front of other people. So then I transitioned, because I had in that swinging scene, I had met some girls who were escorts, and they had told me, "You'd be good at being being an escort. You should try it."
Mm.
And it's legal back in Australia, so there's no risk involved really with that. So I tried it, was pretty good at it, was very successful at it. Like you said, I was a lot of my work was banging a dude's wife while he sat in the corner and watched.
What was that like? Like, were you ever at it going like, I can't believe I'm doing this?
Yeah, the first few times I was like, I can't believe this guy is like paying me he's the one paying me. He's the one paying me to do this. It was his idea. It wasn't her idea. It was his idea.
How does that go down? Does he like give you a high five and toss you a couple hundred and be like, all right, I'll call you in a couple weeks? Or
like you walk in the house, shakes your hand, sits you down, you can have a drink or two, or like they sort of host you to make you feel relaxed. They make you feel great. And then it's like, all right, I'm going to sit here. You two go at it. And,
right.
Entertain his wife. But I had one of my first experiences doing that. It was pretty funny. So this couple booked me, went around to their house, and they had a couple of dogs, and we're sitting around in the backyard, and they'd smoked some weed. I don't smoke weed, but I don't care if people do around me. So they'd smoked some weed, and they were getting a little bit high, so they were kind of not really aware of what was going on. And she came, sat down next to me, and we started kissing. And these dogs, man, they said, I can't remember I think it might have been a Rottweiler or something. So she's here, I'm making out with her. This dog is right in my face, growling its head off, like it's gonna bite my gonna bite my jugular out. He's on the other side of the room, just high as a kite, just chilling. She's like high as a kite, chilling. Neither of them are like aware that this dog is gonna tear.
And the dog's not having it.
Yeah, and I'm like, maybe we should move this inside. I'm just a little bit concerned about Fluffy over here. And that was one of my first gigs. It was pretty funny.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, you've got some stories to tell, obviously, yeah?
Yeah, a couple. Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe, I mean, I can see it. Like, yeah, okay. So I can see it. I can see a dog do it. I can see how uncomfortable that would be. Yet you just carry on with the business and just, all right, let's get on with it. Let's go inside and finish this up and leave the dogs out here.
I want to get my paycheck, man. I want to get paid.
Yeah, yeah. And how long did you do that before you did your first film, and what was that like?
So I was escorting on and off. So I would do it for like 6 months and take 6 months off. I was doing it on and off for maybe. Was
it mostly guys that wanted to be cucked, like watch you have you do their wives, or? Oddly
enough, it depended upon what city I was in.
Mm-hmm. So
this is a weird thing I found was where I started was Perth in Western Australia, which is basically it's a capital city, but it's predominantly mining workers who do fly in, fly out work. So what they'll do is they'll fly to them. They get paid really good money too. They'll fly to the mines in like the outback.
Yeah, they're there for 3 weeks and then 3 weeks off.
Exactly. Yeah, and then they come back with a ton of cash. We used to call them cashed up bogans.
Yeah. I have a guy in my community that's a firefighter medic for mines in the middle of Australia somewhere.
Yep. So in that city, which is predominantly blue collar workers,
yeah,
there was a lot more of this style of booking where it's like a dude wanting to see his wife get banged by someone else.
Were these guys alpha males or beta males? Like, how would you describe them if you were to placehold them?
I would describe them as like your typical sitcom dad.
Oh, like the butt of all jokes, incompetent loser.
Like the guy who sort of self-deprecates and makes like whatever she wants kind of jokes.
Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's the kind of dude.
Well, Bill, I was thinking maybe this like Stirling guy that we find here in the newspaper would be nice if he porked me, yeah?
But okay, whatever you want, sweetheart.
It was always the guy's idea, though.
It was his idea for it.
Always the dude's idea. So here was my theory: is like these guys are away.
She never protested though. Like when she set eyes on you, she said,
"Of course not." But I think what was happening is these dudes are away for 2 or 3 weeks
Yeah.
on a mine site with only dudes, and they're just watching endless amounts of porn, and that's just getting this like fantasy in their head. Oh, I want to see my wife get fucked. I want to see my wife get fucked. And they come home and they book someone like me.
Did you ever have women pay for it?
Oh yeah, yeah. This is the other interesting thing I found. So blue collar city, lots of this sort of cuckolding stuff. In a city like a more metropolitan place like Melbourne or Sydney, it's white collar business women who are earning like 6 figures a year, who are past the wall, like in their 30s, whose dating options are very limited. They can't, like, either they can't find a guy, or they're in a situation career-wise where it would look bad if they were seen.
So they're paying you for discretion. They're basically paying you to service and then leave. Then
absolutely. But there's also with the when it was couples, it's just about the sex.
Yeah.
When it was these women on their own, it was always like a dinner date, and like it wasn't just about the sex. It was more about like giving them that experience of being with like an attractive, put together guy.
It's funny. Have you? I don't know if you're familiar with this guy. I got him coming on next week for before the train wreck. CW Confidence. He's another Aussie.
No.
Anyway, he wrote a book on seeking, sugar dating, and his experience in Australia. So he's got an interesting story. Well, I'm going to save that for next Monday, but you guys are going to want to watch that one. But there's similar sort of elements of women kind of like looking just to get their rocks off with some discretion, but in a different kind of way with this. It's interesting. Okay, so you're doing escorting. What was the transition in your first film like?
So
how did you land that? Like, do you have an agent? Do you just answer an ad in the paper? How does that normally work?
Well, when I started, I was in Australia, right? And there isn't a really big porn scene in Australia. There's literally only a couple of companies that would shoot guy-girl stuff. There's a few more that shoot solo girl videos.
Mm-hmm.
There's only really 2 that shot guys and girls together. And that's in Melbourne. So I had to move from Perth, leave everything behind, fly across the country to Melbourne to pursue this. But what I did was I got a couple that I knew from the swinging scene, and I said, hey, do you mind if I film us and use this demo footage to like pitch a director? And they were fine with it as long as we didn't share it with anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So I like got a camera and stuff and filmed a bunch of stuff and then put it in a Dropbox and I guess like wrote them. According to the director, it was the most professional application he'd ever seen for a dude wanting to get into porn. And then, like 2 months later, he signed me up. Or did sign me up. He booked me for a shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to Melbourne. And I basically, because I moved to Melbourne, I kept doing the escorting as well, because that's a big hub in Australia. And I started to network with all the escorts, both male and female, and all the porn stars in Australia, because that's mainly where the industry is. And there's a lot of crossover in Australia. Basically, everyone who's done porn in Australia is also an escort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then built up about 6 months of experience there. And then I used that experience and a couple of connections there to get my first scenes in the UK. Again, pitching people via email. And I'm like, basically, here's my resume. Here's all the stuff I've shot. You know this person. He shoots something very similar. Would you be interested in shooting me? Moved to London on a work visa, and then was there for 6 months. And I basically piggybacked like that across the world.
Was that a playing to win approach to getting into adult film? Because we were talking before we went live about the difference between playing to win and playing not to lose. And you said there were some guys that would play not to lose and kind of play a little more conservatively that didn't get the same amount of opportunities that you did.
Yeah, basically, there was a few guys I met along my journey. So like I said, I went from Australia, then I shot in England, then I shot in Budapest in Hungary, and then I shot in Prague in the Czech Republic, and then I came to the US. Mm-hmm. So I bounced around, right? And every time, so like when I first started, I left everything behind. I sold my business. My family was all there. All my friends are there. All my connections are in Perth. I left, packed everything up, left, went to Melbourne just to pursue this thing. And then when I went to the UK, same thing. And along the way, I kept running into guys who were trying to break into the industry, but they were, what's the expression? Like, they weren't diving into the deep end like I was. They were putting a foot in the cold water to see what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they would still have their regular day job. For me, it was a case of I burnt all my bridges.
Mm-hmm.
I had no choice. I had to succeed at this, or I was going to be broke. And don't get me wrong, like it got rough.
Do you think that would have made a difference? Like, there's that old expression that you burn the ship on the shores when you arrive in the new land, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do you think that gets you more motivated to get exactly what you want out of the business and to be more successful, or no?
100%, man. That's literally what I did. I didn't have. I sold my business. That was my source of income. I'd sold my business. My face was on the internet now, right? So it's, even though there's not as much stigma being a guy doing this as there's being a girl, you're not really gonna get a corporate job if you're known to have been doing adult work, right? Mm-hmm. So I have no choice. I had to make this work. So that means, you know, if I'm not shooting, I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, well, how do I network with this person? Because I know this person is really important in the industry. Who do they know that I know, and how can I get in touch with them? And you're just figuring out as much as you possibly can behind the scenes with the little information you have. And if you're obsessed, I was obsessed with this, man. I looked up every single YouTube interview I could find from male porn stars, like just trying to learn as much as I possibly could about the industry, about how they do their job, about how they network, about how they succeeded, so that I would have, 1% advantage over the next guy who was trying to get shot and cast.
So it's safe to say that you got obsessed with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Have you always been that way with everything you did? With the paleo business and the chemists and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I become pretty evangelical about the stuff I get into. Yeah. Like, when I was doing the paleo business, like, I did that because I came out of a really bad breakup, right? And I was like, I've always used like pain as a motivator, or like, I guess I would call it like the fuck you complex. Mm-hmm. Like, if I create this enemy in my mind, it really motivates me to basically like stuff that person. Like, they made the wrong decision. I'm going to prove them wrong. And I'm going to go out and better myself. Mm. And that was an example of that. So, bad breakup. I got heavily into like diet and fitness through the paleo diet, got shredded. Best shape I'd ever been in my life. Tons of female attention, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then I sort of found out that, I kept bragging to people about the diet. I was like, man, you got to try this diet. You got to try this diet. It's great. It's great. But everyone kept saying it was too hard, too much time involved with the cooking. So I was like, there's a problem to be solved here. I'm going to do this for these people and sell prepackaged meals so they can stick to the diet and they can save time, and et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And we built we ended up doing like $500,000 a year in revenue for like 3 years with that business.
Okay. How's your view of women changed since you got into adult film industry? Like, what have you learned that you previously didn't see?
I guess from being in the swinging scene and being in the escorting side of things, I'd kind of already had this exposure, but compared to my early 20s, let's say, like fresh out of university and naive, not red-pilled, I didn't realize when I was younger how perverted some women can be, and especially how much women love to be submissive and love to be dominated, and there's still quite a lot of them that love to be even degraded and humiliated, just taken control of. That's not what our society tells people. Our society tells people this Disney fantasy of, good guys finish first and, all this crap. And when you get like this behind the curtain look at, women's fantasies and the way they respond to things sexually, it's like, oh man, we've been lied to our entire life about.
When did you first pick up on that? Was that first year?
Pretty much like straight away, because I was hanging out with lots of when I'm networking in the industry, I'm hanging out with lots of professional escorts, and I'm hanging out with lots of porn stars and things, and everyone's just gossiping, talking about work, so they're very open sexually, so they're all just talking about fantasies, talking about sex, talking about these kind of things.
What are without being too difficult with the YouTube algorithms, what were some of the crazy ones that you heard?
Well, for me, like one of the most interesting ones I've come across recently is a girl who pays for her accountant all of her yearly accounting fees with jars of pee. And she described it to me. She was like, I'm like, so how does this process actually work? She's like, well, I go in to do my taxes. I bring all my tax information with him. He gives me a jar. I go to the bathroom, fill it up. I come back, give it to him, and then he does my taxes.
And what does he do with it?
I didn't ask.
You didn't go there.
I didn't want to go there, Rich.
Yeah. I swear, man, sometimes I could turn this show into a comedy show the way I go about it, but I got to be careful because this is public. All right, so I got a couple of carded questions here I want to throw at you, which will generate some interesting dialogue. What does a male adult film star daydream about?
Money, for me. Yeah, I just daydream about making money.
What do you do with money? Like, why is money important to you?
Money is important to me because I want to be free. And there's nothing less free than being poor and being constantly concerned about paying the bills. It's mentally draining. It occupies your brain so much. And I've been there. I've been like on this journey. Like I said, I became obsessed with it. It was, a burn the boats kind of situation. I got to one point where I literally had $12 in the world, and I'm in a foreign country with no support network, nothing, right? And I pulled myself out of that, right? But that, like, coming from that position, I never want to feel that feeling again. That feeling of like just dread of like, holy shit, I might end up on the street, right?
So let's talk about money for a minute. So what's your relationship with money like? Like, when somebody asks me to kind of get the ball rolling, so if somebody asks me, like, how do you view money, Rich, then my response would be something along the lines of, well, I see it as a store of value. And if you accumulate wealth, then that means that you've created value for people and they've given you money in exchange for that. So it's almost like it's a yardstick, the way that I see it. And I also see it from the perspective that it creates options too, right? Like it gives you the ability to raise the middle finger and tell other people to pound sand that you don't want to work with. It gives you the ability to maneuver and pick up and leave whenever you need to. So I see it as like a freeing tool to certain degree as well. I'm just curious what you see money as, like what your relationship with it is like.
So one of my mentors, this is before the porn side of things, one of my mentors taught me early on to think of money as concentrated time. Right? So a really good example he gave me. Why do you pay a plumber? Right? You pay a plumber because there's a certain amount of like his skill set and his expertise, his knowledge of how to fix a problem with your plumbing comes from years of knowledge. So the time it would take for you to learn those same skills, learn that same knowledge, you can save that time by simply paying this man, right? So every transaction, not every transaction, but most transactions are basically a concentration of time. When you work a 9-to-5 job, you're exchanging your time for money. But when you're paying people for things, for their skills and their expertise, you're paying them so you don't have to spend that time and energy learning and doing that exact same thing yourself. So the more money you have, if the way I look at it is the more time you actually have in your life. Because you're spending less time on these nitty-gritty things you don't really want to be doing.
Yes, it's the best way to put it, I'd say. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
Yeah, I'm pretty harsh on myself when it comes to things, and I always wish I was more disciplined than I am. I mean, my friends and family would say I'm a pretty disciplined guy, and I'm pretty harsh on myself. But maybe that's just why I'm relatively successful in my life, because I see myself as lazy, and so that makes me want to be more disciplined and push myself more. So,
where did you learn that from? Where did that skill of being harsh on yourself come from?
I've had that since a very young age, man. I was like top of my class in school, like always. Whenever I was the guy who came home from school and just sat down at his homework like every friggin' night, while everyone else is like out like socializing and things. And I think to be honest, that came from like a low self-esteem. Like when I was younger, to be perfectly honest, that was sort of like my way mentally of like making up for my lack of belief in myself. Like, okay, if I can succeed at this, it proves I have worth. And that self-esteem issue isn't there anymore, obviously. But the discipline and the mentality behind working hard is still there.
Do you ever get criticized for being too harsh on yourself?
I in the past from girlfriends and things I have, yeah. But I'm like, well, you like me because I'm this person, so that opinion means nothing.
Yeah, I always find that strange. I mean, I've always been harsh on myself throughout my entire life. I mean, I'm firstborn. I got two younger brothers, and they always seem to look at me like, well, you just seem to get shit done, right? But I find that if you're real hard on yourself, that the world will be a lot easier on you, because the world's a pretty harsh place to begin with. So if you set the bar real high, then when shit comes at you, you've kind of conditioned yourself to deal with that. Yeah,
absolutely, man. If you like, nobody has as higher expectations of me as I do. So like, if I fall short of my expectations, I'm always meeting everyone else's expectations.
I got another question for you. What are 3 things that you believe you need in order to be happy?
Close friends or family would be a primary one. I remember when I was before I sort of started doing my entrepreneurial things, and I was in my early 20s, I traveled around the world, went to about 6 different countries, and deliberately went to a lot of really poor areas, like lived in ghettos, lived in slums, just to sort of see it. And man, like the happiest people in the world, no matter where I went, always were really close with their family and or had like a tribe, a couple of really close friends that they could depend on. And the older I've gotten, I've like reduced my social circle quite significantly down to a few guys who I know have my back no matter what, and my relationship with my family has strengthened as well over that time. When you're younger, you kind of take for granted that you have your parents and your siblings and things. And as I've gotten older, I'm really focused down on making sure I'm staying in constant contact with these people, because, man, like where we're at right now with like the whole quarantine, lockdown, COVID thing, like if the world came to an end, who's really got your back? Really? It's there's not that many people who are going to risk their life for you other than your family and or guys who are in your tribe.
Have you read Jack Donovan's stuff?
Oh yeah, I love The Way of Men. Love that book.
Okay, so you get the idea of the way of the gang, and you draw a perimeter. Yeah, I talk about that. I mean, not as often as I do publicly, but mostly in my community whenever we ever hangouts. But I think it's really important. Like a lot of guys will keep people around. I think women do it far worse than guys do. Like women will keep dozens of women around just because they went to school with them, and they would be ostracized if Becky got thrown out, with Karen or something like that. But I think, for me anyway, like whenever I would hang out with larger groups of people, after a while, you start to realize I'd rather have like a close knit group of like SEAL Team 6 rather than an entire infantry brigade of whatever it is, 100 or 200 grunts, right? Because you just know the guys more intimately, and you know that you can rely on them and lean on them. And I'm totally on board with that. And I think that guys really miss that when it comes to approaching their lives, and they make too many excuses for losers and why they keep losers around in their lives when they should really just let them go. And I'm not saying, you want to be a dick about it or anything like that, but you just kind of put some distance, between you and people that are anchors. I always say there's anchors and sails, right? The sails will kind of pull you along, and the anchors will be the ones that hold you back. Yeah.
That's good. I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Like I've got buddies from back in university who I'll still, and high school, my oldest friends, I'll still stay in touch with them, but they're not the sails like you just described, right? It's not like they're holding me back though. I don't really burn bridges socially. I just sort of, if they're not staying in touch with me, okay, I won't stay in touch with them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a reason to constantly stay in touch with them. Unlike my core group of guys who
Do you
I
ever
know,
burn bridges or blow them up or anything?
very rarely, man. Like, there's only been a couple of people I've burnt the bridge with, and that's because they've tried to fuck me over. I've had a couple of what do you call them? I've had a couple of sociopaths.
Yeah.
In my life, so I'm now good at identifying them. Thankfully,
Yeah.
there's some, there's a silver lining there. But it takes I don't really get fucked over that much, and I don't really offend people that much.
Mm.
Which maybe that's something I should change about myself. I kind of like the idea of pissing people off sometimes.
You ever get called an asshole?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. When I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I get called an asshole.
Well, they usually say if somebody's got a problem with the facts, the problem's not with the facts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Here, I got a quick question I want to throw at you from one of our channel members. He said, do you have any really good networking advice you've learned over the years?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He's talking about business networking specifically.
Yep. I think honestly, this is one of my strengths, to be fair. So years ago, I read a book, and it's a fantastic book. I recommend everybody should check it out. It's called "Trust Me, I'm Lying: Confessions of a Media Manipulator" by Ryan Holiday.
I met Ryan a few years ago.
Great guy, right?
Yeah.
He that book's really eye-opening, and it's a bit dated now.
It still holds true, though.
It holds true. And one of the key lessons I learnt out of that was it was a combination of that and one of my first mentors drilling into me the idea of offer value and solve problems for people. So it's easy to network with people if you can sell them on the idea of your presence. If there's a win-win for both of you, obviously you want something from them, or you want to learn from them or connect with them or whatever.
Yeah.
But what are they getting out of it? Like, there has to be a reason for them to want, like, for them to even, well, for a start, to get their attention, right? And then for them to want to associate with you, there has to be some kind of benefit for them.
Do people ever reach out to you on social media and say, "Hey, I saw that you were in town at this restaurant, and I'd love to pick your brain," sort of thing, and have a coffee with you? You can tell me a little bit more about yourself and your business and blah blah blah.
I don't really get that kind of pitch. I get dudes every day saying, "Hey, I want to get into porn. How do I get into porn?"
Yeah.
And this is a really good example of what I'm talking about. Like, there's guys who will send the message, "Hey, cast me in a porno." Like, they're asking something of me. They want me to do all the work for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, why on earth would I do that? But then
they don't get it. They don't get it, guys like this.
I don't understand. I've never really understood that approach myself. I've always kind of understood the intrinsic idea of like offering value to people.
Yeah.
But then there'll be guys who will ask me in a very respectful, polite way, in a very specific way. They're like, "Hey, I heard this, or I read this about you, or this or that. Here's one really specific question, and then I'll take the time to answer them because they're being polite. But that's very different from someone just generically saying, "How do I get into porn?" Oh, mate, like, watch some YouTube videos for a fucking start.
Yeah.
Like, there's plenty of interviews out there.
There's some work to do that kind of leads up to the cheat codes, because it's almost like going like it would be like you or I reaching out to Elon Musk and say, "Hey, I want to build electric cars. You know, can I pick your brain?" I had a mentor once that told me that you always put a price between you and your time when somebody wants it, because obviously they look at you as an expert and they want to pick your brain, but really what they're saying when they want to pick your brain is they want to pick your pocket, because they want to steal your time from you and steal your wealth. And guys don't get this. So I get messages every day, emails, DMs, whatever, from guys saying, "Hey, you know, I saw you were driving in this part of town. I live in the area. It would be so awesome to have to buy you a drink or buy you a coffee and pick your brain. Or I'd like help with this, or I have a business idea I want to start off the ground, or I'm thinking about marrying this person, but there's some red flags. What do you think?" And it's like, the thing that I learned a while ago it was from Tim Ferriss in the 4-Hour Work Week, I think, because he got into angel investing and what he was doing. I mean, he was living in his mom's minivan at the time. And I think what he was doing, if I recall, was he was donating a lot of his time in Silicon Valley to basically get in front of people. And he was just trying to solve their problems, right? And I think that if you approach people that you want to get help from, is you have to offer something to them first, because they don't know you. They don't have a relationship with you. I think that one of the things that a lot of guys do when they see you on screens, I mean, they see me on a different screen than you. Actually, they probably see us on the same screen just for different reasons. But when they see you on a screen, it's almost like they form a relationship with you because they've seen you, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, or 15 times. And they think, okay, I know this guy. I know what he's thinking. I know the topics he talks about or his moves when it comes to whatever he's doing on adult film. And they just reach out blindly saying, "Hey, big fan. I'd like to talk to you because I'm a big fan." But they don't get that you have to offer something first, right?
Yeah.
It's really, really important to make sure you offer somebody something first before you go demanding their time for insert reason, right?
Well, I think there's a misconception, like with the example you just gave there of guys saying, "Oh, you're in my city. I'd love to buy you lunch or buy you a beer or something," right? There's a misconception in their mind of like that, how valuable that is to you.
Yeah.
Right. To them, someone buying them a meal or buying them a pint is really cool, and they would probably make friends with somebody at the bar over such a thing. But to a guy like you, whose time is far more valuable and can buy his own damn food, it's not the same value proposition. So I think they're coming at it from they're coming at it from their perspective, not from your perspective, which is the problem.
And that's exactly what they've got to learn to switch up. If your closest friend wrote a book about your life, what would the title be?
I think I asked my best friend this like 6 months ago, and he said, if I can remember his answer correctly, it was something like finding conservative values in an unusual place.
And is that because you found conservative values in adult film?
It's because through my experiences, I have become more conservative in my view on life than I used to be.
How so?
Well, I mean, these days being what you would call a classical liberal is considered right wing.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm still I'm very much still a classical liberal, but I believe fundamentally in family, in the structure of that, the relationship with the father and the mother and the children in a family should be, like in that order. Economically conservative. I don't like my tax money going towards things that I deem to be, pointless and inappropriate,
Mm-hmm.
And I guess a part of that comes from age, but a lot of it has come from just experiencing like a really interesting perspective on the world, given the jobs I've done, I guess you could say.
Interesting. What did you want to be when you were growing up? Was it always an adult film?
The first thing I wanted to be was a paleontologist.
Okay, Ross. Yeah, tell us more about that.
Well, it was just Jurassic Park came out at the same time. Everybody wanted to be. I mean, actually, not everyone wanted. Just me. I wanted to be a paleontologist.
Okay.
I think it was like a rock star, and then a paleontologist, and then an actor, and then I wanted to become an academic, and that's kind of when I went to university and went down the chemistry route.
Have you ever played the role of a paleontologist in Allied film? Because I mean, you've played roles of many things, over 200 scenes.
I've played a lot of different things, but sadly, a paleontologist is not one of them yet. I've played a doctor many times. I've played a teacher many times.
What's a role that you've played where you're like, I just can't believe I just did that?
Whenever I've done this like 3 times, playing a Catholic priest.
Okay.
I actually have my own Catholic priest outfit.
Okay.
Because I've done it that many times. But one of the funniest roles we did. It was the whole movie was about like a convent, and I was this Catholic priest that came in, and they got me to do what's it called? It's like a classic Catholic prayer, communion. Yeah, like some kind of communion prayer, right?
Yeah.
It was this long. It was like I had to cheat. I'd like cut it out and stick it into the Bible so I could read it and cheat my lines. But the funny thing was, everyone else in the movie grew up Catholic and knew it word for word, except for me, who actually had to say the damn thing.
Interesting. Share an interesting fact about yourself that not many people would know.
Well, I guess the most on point thing right now is that I've sort of started talking about recently is the fact that I managed to grow my my male appendage before I got into the adult industry.
Let's talk about that, because somebody asked me in a message today. I think it was on the Twitter post. Let me just grab it real quick, because apparently we did not satisfy his question last time. Where is my post here so I can pull it up? There it is. What did he say here? When he was on with Rollo last time, he was going to start explaining how to extend your man piece naturally. Then Rollo interrupted him and we lost it. Remind him today. There's your reminder, my friend.
I like the use of his word man piece. I'm going to use that from now on.
Good. Yeah.
Well, basically, there's 2 ways that you like enlarge. Well, I'll go 3 ways. 3 ways you enlarge your penis in general, right? First is you lengthen the ligaments that attach the penile shaft to the pubic bone. Second is you elongate the shaft itself, and this is done through causing micro tears in the shaft. It's basically it's similar to what you would do when you're bodybuilding, like you lift weights, the muscle tears, it grows back bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not quite the same because the muscle's different. A good way of looking at it is there's a tribe in Myanmar, I think it is, where the women wear these rings around their necks, and they get their elongated necks.
Right.
I think everyone has seen an image of this at some point in their life. It's a very similar concept to that, where you're stretching it out. And the third way you do it is on the girth side of things, is you cause the volume in the penis to expand, and so you increase the size this way. Rather
is this with exercises? Do you put rings around it like they do with the neck situation?
Don't do that. You don't have to put consecutive rings around your penis. But there's various different exercises you can do, and I talk about all this in my book.
Yeah, for those of you that are watching, he has a Gumroad product, How I Grew My Man Part, we'll say. Man part, and other industry secrets. It's less than $100, I think, for all the men out there that are wondering how to have a little more impact. Probably not a bad idea.
Yeah, and it's not like that's just. I know.
I'll grab the link and I'll drop it in the chat for you here.
Oh, great. Well, I titled it like that because I know that's the most common question we get as male performers, and even female performers get the same question from their male fans, like, how do I get a bigger dick, right?
Yeah.
And most people will tell you it's not possible. And even worse, whenever you click on an ad on any of these tube sites that guarantees you the secret to like doing it, they sell you some friggin' pill which is full of exotic sounding herbs, which is no more than like a really crappy Viagra. It's not going to do jack to actually increase it. The reason I know this is because I've done it. It took me 8 months of consistent effort, but I grew mine an inch in length and about 1/3 of an inch in girth over the course of 8 months of consistent effort. So I know it's doable because I've done it. But in the book, I also talk about, I lead with that because that's what most guys are interested in. But it's kind of a choose your own adventure book for men's sexual health. So I cover how to get stronger, longer lasting erections, which is what we need to do in our job to even get paid, right? I talk about improving your testosterone. I talk about improving your cardiovascular system, getting muscular endurance, getting fitter. And I talk about how to please women in the bedroom from the perspective of a guy who has had sex with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women. And you see patterns again and again and again in terms of what really gets women off in the bedroom. And I talk about all that in this book. So I think there's basically 3 years of knowledge condensed into this thing.
Is this something that you're familiar with? Bathmate, size genetics, and other devices? Do you know what he's talking about there?
These are all really good devices. Yeah, I thoroughly recommend them.
Okay. So we've got the book linked in the chat there. What is describe the most unpleasant job you've ever had to do.
Probably fruit picking.
Fruit picking? Where was that?
I'm from a farming town.
Okay.
So, and my uncle had a farm, and yeah, so my summer job was going out on the farm and just like spending 8 hours in the scorching sun, Australian sun, with you'd always get the first day of doing that was one of the worst days of my job, because you're told to wear like thick socks because the ground is just covered in all these weeds that like stick in your socks and stuff.
Yeah.
The first day on the job, scorching heat, you're sitting there all day doing the exact same thing, picking apples, and your socks are just full of all these burrs which are just sticking into your legs all day. But it teaches you like an honest day's work. It teaches you what an honest, hard day's work is like. And
do you think that every man should do a job that sucks?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like one of my old friends from high school, he when he left university, he went and deliberately got a job working as a garbage collector. And he said it was the best job he'd ever worked because he was up at the crack of dawn. It was physically demanding. So his day started off fantastic compared to everyone else. He was up before everyone else, he'd exercised, and then he had the rest of the day to accomplish whatever he liked. Shitty job, but a great experience for him.
Perspective, yeah. I got a super chat here from Jeremiah. What is the commonality of use of things like Viagra, Cialis, penile implants in the adult industry?
The penile implant is a very interesting thing. So I don't know how many guys know about this, but I call it the robot dick.
Is that the pump? Because a friend of mine told me that his dad got some kind of implant in his Johnson. It was like a Nike pump, like a shoe. Like you basically pump it up.
Yeah. So really? there's a few dudes. This isn't a thing in Europe. I don't think I've ever met anyone in Europe when I was working out there that had this. It seems to be only an American thing. But there's a couple of guys, and everyone keeps this very, very secret. Like no one openly talks about having one. So you sort of have to figure out who's got one just through like rumor and like the experience of the girls who've worked with them, because it feels different. But they basically they hollow out the penis and put this sort of inflatable tube in there, and then they put a pump. I think either in like one of your ball sacks or like on your hip or something, and they push it and it inflates, and that gives them an erection. But basically, I mean, the reason that some of these older dudes in the industry get that is because one, they're in their 50s and things have stopped working, and two, it makes them unstoppable. Like they don't fail ever. The camera never has to cut, so everyone loves hiring them. So it pays for it. When these guys do it, it pays for itself. It might cost them like 10 grand to get the surgery. They'll make that back within the first month because everyone, like they've gone from being like an average performer to being like unstoppable on screen. In terms of things like Viagra, Cialis, these are all really common. There's not everybody uses them though. When I got into the industry, I was certain that everyone must use this. There's a bunch of dudes who are just super fit. And this is a lot of what I base my book on is me learning from these more experienced guys in the industry and learning like what habits they have in their daily life that has caused them to be so good at this job. and basically to have a dick that won't go down.
Yeah, a lot of guys don't understand the importance of cardiovascular exercise
Massive.
and like getting your heart up into like a good range for a good solid, period of time, whether it's 20 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is. But, if you want to do good on the workbench upstairs, you gotta put in some time on the treadmill, the bike, running, track, whatever.
Yeah, man. And that's the thing. When you're younger, if you're like an athletic guy, if you play lots of sports and you're constantly doing stuff, you're kind of getting that exercise, that cardiovascular fitness without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
When you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, if you let that slip, you will really notice it.
I got 2 more questions for you. Shout out to Photoman for the super chat, because there is no way this is getting monetized. You're probably correct. That's okay.
Sorry, Rich.
Appreciate the tip. Well, I knew what I was getting into when I titled this Stirling Cooper, adult film star tells all.
You know what? Okay, here's an idea for you, Rich. Here's what you can do. You can post this video on Pornhub, and you can make ad revenue on Pornhub because they won't demonetize you.
Is that right?
That's something I didn't talk about with our last chat. That's another way that adult entertainers make money now. Is you can post, when I post a video, my own video, on a site like Pornhub, I get a percentage of the ad revenue.
I had no idea that you could upload just conversations on that site.
I've done that. I haven't got that much on my YouTube channel. I when I was in Europe, I filmed a few videos.
So if I go over here and I look for your channel there, then I can find it?
You will have to go to the very the very last page of my videos. You will see totally safe for work stuff on my Pornhub channel that I have been paid for in ad revenue.
Look at that. It's almost like YouTube.
Yeah.
Huh.
Very, very similar.
All right. I'll leave that open and check that out later. I got 2 more questions for you before we go. As you've gotten older, what has become more important and what has become less important to you?
Women have become less important to me.
How so?
Well, primarily because the more sex, when you've started having more sex in your life, not just regularly, but in total, right? Mm-hmm. When your notch count goes up, women sort of lose the flair they had over you, the power they had over you before, right? Mm-hmm. It's not as in once you've had, I think for me, being a younger man, I didn't get laid very much, when I was really young.
How old were you when you lost your virginity?
I lost my virginity early. I lost my virginity at 16. Okay. Actually, no, 15. I lost it at 15. But I was with that same girl for 3 years. Terrible relation, super blue pill, terrible relationship, absolute beta. And then I went on a real big dry spell, right? Mm-hmm. And it was that kind of me having all this, had all these sort of sexual fantasies I wanted to play out in real life. Having never getting to do those in my early 20s is kind of what put me in this position now, wanting that created that kind of desire and that drive, right? Mm-hmm. But once you've experienced the kind of things you fantasize about, it loses its power over you. Mm-hmm. Right? So it becomes less important. It's okay, well, and ironically, the less you give a shit about it, the more it comes to you as well. Mm-hmm. Which is another, that's a big thing I learned in my late 20s was the less I want it, the more it comes to me, man.
Was there ever a time where you felt performance anxiety when you were getting into it with women?
Not in my personal life. On set, yeah. It happens on set. Yeah. Every male performer in the industry has had a day when he is flopped.
What do you do then? You just reschedule, or they throw you a couple pills, or what?
Well, so if it's real, sometimes it'll just be a bad day where it goes up and down. Right, You'll get through it. You'll get the thing done, fine. But there's been I've had 1 or 2 situations where I just couldn't finish it. They dock your pay, they send you home, and unfortunately, you never work for that person ever again.
Oh, really?
It's very you sink or swim as a guy in this industry, especially if it's your first shoot with somebody. You cannot ever fail your first shoot as a male performer, because reputation is everything in this industry. If you fail that shoot, they will never book you again because they just wasted a ton of money. They didn't get a product out of it. and then they'll tell everybody else that you failed, and they will not hire you either.
Mm.
So you can, however, I have had situations where I've failed on like my third or fourth shoot with a particular company. This is very, very early on in my career when I was still learning the trade, right? And that doesn't stuff up your career. But if you fail that first one, and it's kind of why it puts even more pressure on you. If you fail that first one, you are done. You are out. Yeah. That was the second half of your question. It was
So the first part was, what do you care less about, or what became less important? What's also become more important to you?
My health has become a lot more important to me. It's sort of something I took for granted quite a lot in my early 20s.
Was it because you ever had it exposed to risk, or?
I had my mother, unfortunately, she passed away from cancer a few years ago, and that kind of like when you think about like when someone's dying from cancer, it's like it's not like someone's died in a car crash where it's just taken from you suddenly. It's you're faced with the prospect of looming death over an extended period of time, and you're thinking about it every day. That really put my health at the forefront of my mind. So
do you drink alcohol? Do you smoke anything, or?
I don't smoke. I've never smoked. Alcohol's always been my vice. Yeah. And this last year, I've really taken an effort to like try to eliminate that out of my life as much as possible. Yeah.
So last question before we wrap up. Describe an average day, and what are your rituals and routines? I don't know if it's an average day for you because you don't work every day, right? Like, would it be like an average week? Maybe you could describe.
Yeah, I mean, let's just. I'm assuming they're going to talk about. They want to know about a shoot day.
Yeah.
So I'll just describe that. So like average day for me, I get to set at like 10 a.m. I do some paperwork. I say hi to everybody, introduce myself to the girl I'm going to be working with, and just chit chat with the director, talk about the scene. We go over the script. Then we start filming the dialogue. We start taking photos of the dialogue pieces. This normally takes a good couple of hours. They take their time with the setup part so as to get as much like usable footage as they possibly can. Lots of jokes, talking shit on set, having a laugh. Then we get to the part where we do the hardcore stuff. That's typically, we do the photographs first. We call them the sex stills. We do those first. That takes about 30, 40 minutes. Then you get dressed again, and then you do that in video form. So like the stills are like a dry run, if you will, although not so dry, of what you're going to be doing. Then we get dressed again, film all the video for that part. I orgasm, and then everyone gets to go home. And then I'll come home, and it's like gym or CrossFit or whatever I might have that evening. Yeah, that's a typical shoot day. Yeah.
How many times do you film per week?
I shoot about 15 days a month.
And with the whole quarantine stuff right now, are you working, or is that?
Now everyone's on our industry's on lockdown, man. It's a very interesting situation because I saw an article recently. California were thinking of taking, because our industry is trying to figure out, okay, how can we go back to work safely? Because we deal with STIs all the time, so we're pretty versed in like how to prevent infection. There hasn't been a HIV transmission on an adult industry set, like a pass certified adult industry set for like 10 years. So we're pretty good at it. And so the government is actually thinking of taking some advice from the adult industry once we figure out exactly how we're going to do it. But basically, people are allowed to shoot if they have a partner and they live with them. Then like companies are sort of outsourcing work to them. I've had a little bit of work where I do like some Skype stuff. But that's about it. Everyone's relying heavily on their OnlyFans right now.
Interesting. Yeah, the OnlyFans thing is a interesting phenomenon. Jerry, thanks for the super chat, dude. He says, Rich, saw that look on your face. I know you're going to get a bunch of DMs for porn checks once you upload this interview. Keep your 20 red flags handy. Yeah, I got to figure out what the situation is with using that platform for uploading content. Wouldn't make a lot of sense just to do it for one, but yeah, I'll definitely take a look at it now that he's mentioned it.
Well, that's the thing, man. You can title things a bit more risque than you would title them on YouTube.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could obviously title them whatever you want over there, practically.
No one's taking your content down on Pornhub. That's the deal.
Yeah, I guess not. There's no algorithms that are saying, "Oh no, you can't watch this. You should be watching a cat video or listening to somebody over here talking about this nonsense."
Yeah.
It's been a slice, man. I appreciate you hopping on and sharing some of your experiences and the stories around your life and how you've played to win and what that looked like. And yeah, it's been a good one. Hang on after we go off air because I want to talk to you for a couple minutes. But
Cool.
yeah, guys, thanks for watching this. Actually, real quick, I got to shout out to the channel sponsor. Just tilt this over here a little this way and say hi to the guys over at Grondike Soap. Slide my finger across, and if you go to coopersoap.com, the coupon code's already actually applied, but if you're going to hit the link pinned in the top description below, you'll get 10% off if you check out with coupon. So this stuff over here is all pheromone infused handmade soap, and they also have a beard oil as well. High quality stuff, and it doesn't disrupt your endocrine system, which is something you definitely want to consider if self-care matters to you. Let me hang on. There we go. Sterling's back. Guys, thanks for watching. Give it a thumbs up. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you after this?
The best way to find me is on Twitter.
If they want to order an OnlyFans Skype consult with you or something.
They can even find that on my Twitter. My Twitter is actually safe for work.
Yeah.
Right now, so that's not, you can watch it wherever you want.
I'm
at Stirling Cooper X, Stirling spelled STIR, like it is here on the video.
Yeah, there you go.
That's me.
STIRLING Cooper X. So check that out. He's a pretty funny guy actually online in that space too. So we'll see you guys in the next broadcast. The next one that I'm doing live will be on Monday, and I've got the fella from Australia who basically shares his personal experience going on sugar sites and seeking and stuff like that. So we'll talk to you guys on that one. Peace out, guys. Thanks, Sterling.
Take care.